Today, we're talking about batch corrosion inhibition with heavy film-forming inhibitors, or as I like to call it, the peanut butter strategy. Stick around, this is going to be a fun and sticky discussion. So let's start with the basics. Batch corrosion inhibitors are a strategy designed to apply a thick protective film of corrosion inhibitor directly onto the inside surface of the pipeline. Picture this, you're spreading a layer of peanut butter on a piece of toast. That's essentially what we're doing inside the pipeline, coating it with a sticky protective layer that prevents corrosion. Now, batch inhibitors are very different from continuous corrosion inhibitors, which we've covered in a previous episode. If you recall, continuous inhibitors are injected steadily into the pipeline and travel with the water phase. They don't create a sticky film. Instead, they form a super thin one-molecule barrier that protects the pipe by disrupting the electrochemical reactions that drive corrosion. It's complex chemistry, influencing how hydrogen and iron interact at the pipe's surface. Batch inhibitors, on the other hand, don't mess with the corrosion reaction itself. Instead, they act as a physical barrier. Think of it more like pine tar or resin applied to a baseball bat. It's about creating an adherent, protective coating that separates the pipe from corrosive agents. The chemistry is simpler, but applying it effectively is where the art and science comes in. So, when do we recommend using these heavy film-forming batch inhibitors? Well, they're perfect for pipelines where the water isn't moving fast enough for continuous inhibitors to work properly. Continuous inhibitors rely on the rapid movement of water to leapfrog fresh inhibitor molecules to the pipe's surface. Without that movement, the continuous process breaks down. Batch inhibitors are especially important in stagnant water traps, where water can sit for long periods. Over time, stagnant water becomes corrosive as its pH drops. This is a recipe for disaster in terms of corrosion. Batch inhibitors step in by forming a thick, protective barrier that stops corrosive water from even touching the pipe. Now here's where things get interesting. How do we get that peanut butter-like coating onto the pipe? It's a bit of a process, but here's how it works. The raw peanut butter ingredient, the heavy film-forming inhibitor, is super thick and viscous. To make it manageable, chemical manufacturers mix it with solvents to create a stable formula that can be transported and stored without settling. Once it's at the site, the inhibitor needs to be diluted with a hydrocarbon solvent like diesel fuel or plant distillates. This dilution breaks the stable formula, causing the peanut butter component to separate out. Now it's ready to be applied to the pipe. The diluted inhibitor is injected into the pipeline between mechanical cleaning pigs. As these pigs move through the pipe, they smear the peanut butter like paste onto the surface, creating that all-important protective film. Without this pigging process, the inhibitor wouldn't properly adhere to the pipe. Applying batch inhibitors isn't without its challenges. Here are a few we often encounter. Sometimes, the peanut butter paste settles at the bottom of the storage tank in the service truck. If this happens, the active ingredient doesn't make it into the pipeline, and the whole process is compromised. Proper mixing before application is critical. The speed at which the inhibitor solution travels through the pipe is another factor. If it moves too fast, the inhibitor doesn't have enough contact time to stick properly. To counter this, we often increase the volume of the inhibitor mixture to ensure sufficient contact time. The amount of inhibitor needed is based on the surface area of the pipeline. Essentially, you're calculating how much peanut butter is required to coat the pipe evenly. An interesting and quick test of the effectiveness of your application program is to place a sample of the inhibitor diluent mix into a mason jar. Within an hour, settling of the active inhibitor should be able to support a popsicle stick, an indication there is substantial active inhibitor within the mixture. Here's the bottom line. Batch inhibitors are essential for pipelines with pre-existing corrosion damage or areas prone to stagnant water. By creating a robust physical barrier, they stop active corrosion in its tracks and prevent further growth of existing defects. For pipelines where water moves slowly or accumulates, this strategy isn't just effective, it's often the only viable option. The heavy film-forming inhibitor ensures that no corrosive water comes into contact with the pipe's surface. So, if you're dealing with slow-moving water, stagnant traps, or pre-existing corrosion damage, think of batch inhibitors as your peanut butter solution, a thick, sticky layer of protection for your pipeline. Just remember, the application process requires careful planning, from dilution and mixing to pigging and volume calculations. Thanks for tuning in to today's episode of Trusted Pipeline Advisor. If you found this helpful, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video with others in the industry. And as always, happy corrosion mitigation travels.